Right. I was nearly 27 years old. I had actually taken my son to his pediatrician. He was my second child, and so I was already noticing some developmental milestones were not being met to a worrisome level. And I wasn't thinking that there was autism. That wasn't even a word floating in my head. I had no idea what was going on. The thing that what I thought might be happening was seizures, because he would go into these stares and just not react to the room around him. And I worried about that. So I took him into the pediatrician. I started explaining things, and he said, there's this thing called autism spectrum disorder. We should refer you out and, see if maybe this is a good fit. And I said, what's bringing you to that? And he said, well, just experience, but a lot of times this is hereditary. And as he's explaining this diagnosis of my son, he's very strongly hinting that maybe I should also pursue a diagnosis. So I'm assuming that when I came into the doctor's office, I was displaying enough signs that he was able to identify it quickly.
As you looked back on your childhood, or maybe some of your struggles in middle high school, did that make sense? Did you resist this identification, or did it seem to kind of just things make sense for you?
No, there was no resistance. It's just not how I operate anyway. I'm not the type of person that, meets everything with resistance. It was a curiosity for me. I had heard of autism, but just like anybody of that time and of my era, our knowledge of it was very limited. Movie portrayals such as Rain Man, which is actually not about somebody with autism. So the internet was rather new. There weren't as many resources available at your fingertips. So I jumped online and I did a little research. It was actually so long ago, I don't even think I used Google. I think I used to Ask Jeeves to search about autism. And I came up with a couple of links, and the links weren't happy. The information they were giving was frightening. I got a little scared at that point. I was worried, okay, what am I getting into? There was a video that was out at the time that was talking about autism, robbing your children, and that it was a scary thing. So it did frighten me, what I was reading. But again, I didn't resist. I wanted to go the next step and started reaching out to university libraries and local libraries to see what I could find out. The more I learned, the further I got down the path, the more I started checking boxes. Yeah, when I was a kid, I remember this. I was actually looking at it for my son, but I couldn't help the parallels of thinking back when I was little. And so then I talked to my mother and I said, hey, when I was really little, before I could remember, what do you see here? And she kind of started seeing the same pattern. She's like, oh, this explains a couple of things. So I do believe it was an eye-opener for us.
And you are multi-talented in music, but talk a little bit about your prodigy with the violin and I guess stringed instruments, or specifically the violin.
Yeah, I wanted to play from the age of 3. So I didn't even know what the instrument was called. So this is according to my mother. I just was mesmerized anytime I heard a violin or saw it on television. But there were just no lessons available. I lived in the suburbs of Atlanta. There was just nothing available at the time for me. So she put me in dance. I took to it very quickly. I liked the stage. I liked performance. But we kept looking. At the age of nearly 10, we finally came across a violin teacher. And 6 months after starting violin lessons, I won my first competition. So they picked up pretty quickly that I was, this was more than just an interest for me. This was a gift, as they called it. And I was later referred to as being a child prodigy. By the time I had been playing maybe about 4 years, I was already teaching professionally, helping my teachers out, and they were looking for programs. The thing that stopped me from going to programs such as Juilliard or Eastman, they have programs for kids that are not in college yet, was emotional issues, things that we didn't understand because I wasn't diagnosed with autism at the time, right? I was having night terrors 3 to 4 nights a week. I was having trouble navigating socially. And so my parents were actually very afraid, even though I would have survived fine as a violinist in this environment. They worried tremendously that I wouldn't do well as an individual in these environments. My music teacher even posed the same problem. She was afraid I wouldn't understand the competition, And, I would take it so personally that it might be destructive. So, there were places where a diagnosis at a young age would have really helped me understand that, with accommodations, I could have pursued this music thing. But that also came with a weird shading, because the more we talked about autism, the less I became talented or a prodigy, and the more it became a special interest. And that really started to annoy me. I felt like I was being downgraded. I wasn't allowed to be an individual outside of autism. Everything was now being pushed through this autism filter.
And I think when I heard you speak, we were on the same kind of speaking circuit for a little bit here in Georgia. And when you said that, that really kind of clicked with me about how that would be a downgrade, just because of a new label or a diagnosis. Something that was celebrated, something that was admired, now became just a criteria for the diagnosis. That really spoke to me, as I've heard many other people, whether it's research or a genre in history or computer science or whatever it is. While we have to, I've started changing it to a passion or intense passion versus like special interest, but aligning that passion with the right accommodations can be amazing for people.
Right.
On the spectrum to really find that.
And for my friends on the spectrum, I want to clarify a couple of things too. I'm not at all saying that autism was the negative aspect there. What I try to do as an advocate is explain that there's autism, but there's an individual as well. We have personalities, wants, desires that are independent of the autism. For some of my friends on the spectrum, those lines are very blurred. They see a lot of overlap in their autism and in their personality. I'm one of those people where the lines are a little clear. The parts of my life that I feel are affected or are changed by autism, and the parts of me that I think would be just like they are whether I was autistic or not. And my music is one of those things. I feel like the ability to play violin and to learn it as quickly as I did was part of me as a person. And my autism enhanced parts of that for me, but as not because of my autism. I don't have a musical gift because I'm autistic. And that's the thing I want to differentiate.
Yeah, because sometimes even with my own clients, it's like everything negative gets lumped on autism and everything that's really positive gets lumped on autism. And so it's like, what's me? And I do exactly what you say. All have family of origin. You have temperament. You have personality. You're an individual that shares a label with other people in this thing called the autism spectrum. So thank you for sharing that, because sometimes for some people that throws people into a little bit of an identity crisis. Well, what's been me all along and what's been autism, especially if they're diagnosed much later in life. That's an important journey I think people need to go on. So I thank you for kind of throwing that out there for people to think about.